My friends, welcome to this episode of the Outdoor Gear Review. I hope you all are doing well. What I have here behind me is the Gazelle T3X tent. If you're not familiar with the Gazelle family of tents, essentially they are a type of pop-up shelter which features an interlocking pole and hub system that they use that is not proprietary. You can find this system on a number of different tents from a number of different companies. Some of these companies have products that look identical to this, which is very interesting. The company claims that these tents can be set up in around 90 seconds. Now, unfortunately, that's not completely accurate. It takes minutes, but nonetheless, these tents can be set up rather quick. Before I begin with my review, there are a few points that I'd like to make. First, the tent is being set up here in this road, on this road, because this is the shadiest spot here at Lone Wolf Mountain at the time of filming. Next, folks, with this episode, I'm going to focus mainly on the pros and cons of this tent. I will touch upon the stats very quickly, but very quickly. I'm not going to go over every feature because I've done that already in the preview. So if you want more information about this tent, if you want to see every feature, if you want to learn about setting it up, watch the preview. This episode is all about sharing my thoughts and experiences with this tent as I've tested it out. Before we touch upon the stats of this tent, I want to say this. More than likely, this is going to be a controversial review, and that's because this is a polarizing product. You have a large group of people who absolutely love it, and then on the opposite side, you have a large group of people who do not like this tent. Those are individuals who have had issues and problems with this tent. With that being said, everyone, in this episode, I'm going to be sharing with you all my experiences that I've had. I'm going to tell you what I like, what I don't like. I'll show you what failed. That way you can take that information and use it any way that you want to. Maybe you're considering purchasing this tent, maybe you have one, and I'm going to alert you of some potential problems. Nonetheless, this episode is all about information, and I'm going to share with you not only my experiences, but those that I've heard of from you all. Over the last couple of months, I have received hundreds and hundreds of messages and emails about this tent. Some good, some bad. With that being said, let's go ahead and touch upon some stats real quick. Again, in the preview, I've gone over every single detail. In this one, I'll be touching upon the main points. First off, everyone, this tent features 2 doors, and the company claims this is a 3-person tent. Plus, there's enough room for ample gear. I would have to disagree. In my opinion, this is a 2-person tent plus gear. 3 people in a pinch, but less gear inside. In fact, not much at all. The company also claims this tent has a peak height of 68 inches, but after measuring the tent, that is absolutely not true. The peak height of this tent is about 4 inches less, which means that the majority of people cannot stand up inside of it. Now, I bring this up not only to give you all the information, but because there's a misconception about this tent. A lot of people think that you can stand up in the T3 version, and that's simply not the case. It is 76 inches by 82 inches and offers 43 square feet of space. The stored size is rather large. It's 57 inches by 10 inches by 10 inches. The overall weight on my scale is 29 pounds for this tent. And when it comes to the materials, you're looking at a combination of Oxford polyester, a 210 denier, and also a 30 denier. The tent features YKK zippers, and the company claims that the fly features a 2,000 millimeter hydrostatic head rating, and the floor features a 5,000 millimeter hydrostatic head rating. This is available in one color, and you're looking at it, and that's Alpine Green. The retail price is $390, but you can oftentimes find this on sale for around $300. It should be mentioned that there are numerous versions of this tent. There's a 3-person, 4-person, 8-person, and so on. And it should be mentioned there are numerous accessories for this tent available, including footprints, better stakes, and water-resistant duffel bags. Before I begin telling you all about the testing that I've done with this tent, let's go ahead and address the claims that the company makes about this product. So first off, they say that this tent is large enough for 3 people plus plenty of room for additional gear. As I mentioned before, that's not necessarily true. 2 people plus gear, or 3 people and no gear. Once you're inside of the T3X, especially with 2 people, you begin to see how little space there really is. Don't get me wrong, this is a big tent, but when you read that it's big enough for 3 people plus gear, once you step inside, you'll realize that's not accurate. The company also claims that the tent collapses to a small size that will fit in the backseat or trunks of most cars or trucks. I would say that this is accurate. It will fit in the backseat or the trunk of most vehicles. Not all, of course, but most. The company goes on to say that the hub design makes assembly fast and easy, and I'd say this is absolutely accurate. They say that the tent arrives fully assembled and sets up in 90 seconds. Neither one of these claims is accurate. The tent is not fully assembled and it doesn't set up in 90 seconds. You take out the body, you have to pull all the panels out, then you have to put the fly on and then stake it out. You could skip the staking out part, but staking it out really does give you the overall best, tightest pitch, especially when it comes to the floor. Ultimately, setting this up and breaking it down takes longer than 90 seconds. They go on to say that this features 6 tightly woven mesh windows, and that is true. Unfortunately, when they say this mesh is tightly woven, they're not kidding. It is super tight, so tight in fact that it limits airflow. I'll talk more about this in just a minute. They say that this features 2 D-shaped doors with tightly woven mesh screens behind them. Both of these claims are accurate. They say that the floor is removable for easy cleaning. I personally disagree with this. Taking out the floor is easy, putting it back in is extremely difficult, and getting a good seal is also difficult. I really wish the company did not make this tent have a removable floor, because it only creates problems, and I'll talk more about those in just a minute as well. Removable gear loft and 6 gear pockets, both are true. Removable rain fly to protect you from the elements. This is also true. Lastly, they claim a duffel bag is included for easy storage and carry. This is accurate. Now everyone, let's talk about the testing that I've done with this tent. Over the last couple of months, I've been testing this out rigorously, and I've done so in a wide range of conditions. Some that were rather cool, some that were rather warm. At the same time, I've been doing quite a bit of rain testing with this tent, and I can comment on waterproofness and also ventilation, airflow, and condensation. Now it's time to get to the meat and potatoes of this review, so let's start with the pros. So first off, when it comes to the setup process and the breaking down process, super simple. It may take longer than 90 seconds, but not by much. 3 or 4 minutes, you have this set up, you're good to go. And overall, the setup process is super simple. You take the tent out of the duffel bag, you pull the panels, you throw the fly over the top, you raise the roof, stake it out, and you're good to go. It's that simple, it's that fast. Once this tent is set up and you have it staked out, it is incredibly solid. I've had this tent out in rainstorms with winds around 50 miles per hour, and this tent did not budge. The way that the panels pop out really does reinforce this tent. It is incredibly stable. It's impressively stable. I mean, it really does handle strong winds with ease. It's very impressive. Next, the tent offers plenty of space for 2 people. 3 people with virtually no gear inside of the tent, or 2 people with gear. In my opinion, this makes more sense as a 2-person tent rather than a 3-person, especially when you consider the fact that you cannot stand up inside of this tent. So imagine having 3 people hunched over. That really doesn't make a lot of sense. Next, everyone, I have to say that I like the overall looks of this tent. The color combination, I think it looks slick. And talking about the overall feel of the product, I have to say that it feels rather solid. The materials, they don't feel cheap, they're rather thick. Overall, it feels rather robust. Next, everyone, as far as the duffel bag goes that comes with the tent, it does a great job of doing what it needs to do. The tent fits inside of it easily, and also it's easy to take the tent out of. It offers plenty of space for the tent, for the fly, for the tent stakes. It works well. You have numerous handles so you can carry this just about any way that you want to. In the end, it's a good product, and I'm glad they included it. Now, my friends, let's move over to the cons for this tent. So con number 1 is waterproofness. In the end, this is not a waterproof tent. This is not a tent that I trust when it comes to heavy rainfall, and it ties in directly to quality control. The overall fit and finish and quality of this tent is absolutely awful. It's shockingly bad. There are holes all over this tent. There are loose threads all over this tent. When you consider the retail price of this tent, $390, it's shocking that the quality is this bad. When we first got this tent in, we set it up, my wife was walking around it, and she's like, "Hun, this looks awful." And I had to agree, the tent looked rough. Loose threads all over the place, holes all over the place. I mean, holes punched right through the fabric going into the inside of the tent. I believe these issues to be quality control related issues. Speaking of which, there are storm flaps that go over the zippers for the doors. If you look at this side, there's a 1-inch gap between those storm flaps. If you look at the other side of the tent, that gap does not exist. Ultimately, this amounts to poor quality control. And I have to say, I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed for the retail price, and I'm not impressed for the sale price. Even $300 for a tent that's in this rough a shape is not acceptable in my opinion. I have heard from countless viewers who have had waterproof issues when it comes to their tents, namely with the poles, the doors, and the holes all over the tent. I spoke with one viewer who had to rebuild the hub assembly on each of the panels because those points leaked. Then we have to factor in ventilation. The overall ventilation inside of this tent is very poor. Yes, the tent is covered in mesh panels. You have vents and you also have the doors. That mesh is so tightly woven that it lets in very little airflow. It takes a substantial wind gust for that air to be blown into the tent. Because of this, I've seen some very interesting solutions from my viewers. One individual sent me a picture of a big box fan in one of the windows, right up against the mesh, pulling air into the tent. He did this because he had to, because he needed airflow inside of this tent. Limited airflow translates to condensation. This is a single wall tent, And unfortunately, condensation inside of it is absolutely terrible. And again, it goes back to ventilation. I received an email from an individual recently, and he couldn't decide whether or not his tent was just full of water because of condensation or because it was leaking. I couldn't tell by the pictures sent, but based upon my own experiences, I wouldn't be surprised if the tent was leaking and he had issues with condensation as well. The next con that I have for this tent is the fact that it's a large tent, and for some people, this is going to be a tent that's difficult to set up, not only because of the weight, but also the size of this tent. Individuals who have problems with mobility, smaller ladies with limited strength, they're going to have issues when it comes to setting up this tent. Next, I've already spoken about the dimensions of the tent and the fact that what the company states is not accurate. Now everyone, I want to talk about the tent stakes that were included with this shelter. Overall, they do a fantastic job of anchoring to the ground. The problem is this: when it comes time to pull those stakes from the ground, they have a small lip on there. That's roughly the size of one finger. Think of these tent stakes as being suctioned into the soil. You go down to pull it up, you can't do it. It's all of that pressure on one finger, and it's very, very uncomfortable. If the lip was twice as big, it would be much easier to pull the tent stake out of the ground. Now, of course, everyone, the type of soil that you're anchoring to is going to play a factor in this. In the end, the tent stakes are not that good, and there's a reason why the company offers upgraded tent stakes. A huge con that I have for this tent are the doors. Getting inside and out of this tent is very difficult, and the larger you are, if you have any mobility problems, the more difficult this is going to be. The doors are so poor, in my opinion, I would not recommend this tent to anyone. I think smaller children will have an easy time getting inside of this, but most adults, they're going to struggle a little bit. Because of the shape of the door, it's a trip hazard, and to get into and out of the tent, you almost have to swing your body over that lip. In the end, it's just a terrible design for a door. And with this tent, you have two of them. Speaking of the doors, I do not like the way that the door zips shut and then you have the mesh behind it. With most tents, you have a door and a piece of mesh that are zipped together. That way, when you unzip the door, you can enter the tent. That's not the case with the Gazelle. The door and the mesh screen are separate, so you have to open up the door and then open up the mesh screen. That doesn't sound bad, but unfortunately, it's more complicated than that. With the door and the mesh screen, you have zipper pulls, and they look identical. So oftentimes, you'll go down to open up the door, you'll grab one for the mesh, and you'll jam it. Then you have to go looking for the one for the door. In the end, if you purchase this tent, if you have this tent, I would highly recommend color coding those zipper pulls. That way you know which one opens the door and which one opens the mesh screen. Do that on the outside and also the inside. It is going to save you a ton of time and frustration. Since we're talking about the doors and getting in and out of the tent, keep in mind that because the opening is so narrow and the way that you have to swing your body, oftentimes you will come into contact with the inside walls or with the outside door. This is a problem because if you have condensation on the inside of the tent, you get wet. Or let's say the outside of the tent is wet because it rained, you'll come into contact with that moisture. And again, it goes back to the overall poor design of these doors. Another big con for this tent is the fact that this is not bug-proof. There are many points of entrance where bugs can get inside of this tent when it's all sealed up. Throughout my testing with this tent, I have woken up with bugs all over the place. I've actually seen spiders, large spiders, crawling into this tent. And I'll show you a few points of weakness. For one, on the inside of the tent where you raise the roof, at the top of the tent is a hole. And through that hole is the strap, and that's how you raise the roof and lower it. Take a look at the size of that hole. It is large enough for most insects to crawl inside of the tent. Next, because the floor is removable, it doesn't always feature a good seal. Basically, the floor goes up against the wall with Velcro and attaches that way. And in the corners, it doesn't attach very well. That is a weak point for this tent because bugs can come up through those openings. In the end, everyone, this is not a bug-proof tent. It is hard to get into, it's not waterproof, and condensation and airflow are major problems. And that brings me to my summary for this tent. In the end, for almost $400 or on sale for $300, this tent simply has too many problems. And these issues may carry over to larger versions of this tent. I haven't tested those tents, so I can't comment on that yet. Maybe in the future, I will. With all of this information being present, I would highly recommend thinking very carefully whether or not the Gazelle tent or the Gazelle tents are a good fit for you. Because as it stands for myself, I'm not impressed, not at all. And neither was my wife. In fact, she is the one who purchased this tent. She wanted a tent that was large and easy to set up. And also, this is a tent that a lot of female viewers ask about. It's interesting, we've had more female viewers asking about this tent than even male viewers. So Susie went ahead, ordered the tent, and over the last couple of weeks, she's been testing this out. And I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and share with you all her thoughts on this. This is taken from an adventure that we put up recently.
As of this morning, I'm ready to return it.
Are you going to return it?
Yes.
Yeah.
For myself, the value's not there for me. It's not a great camping experience. I can't even tell you 100% if this tent is leaking or just raining condensation on the inside. Both mornings I've woken up feeling wet, my stuff is wet. I'm just not happy with it. I want to see what else is out there. I want to see if there's something better, you know. Just as much space, easy to set up, a better design. Airflow is really, really important. And that tent just does not have it.
It doesn't. As you all can see there, everyone, Susie is not impressed with this tent. She wasn't impressed, and she's going to return it. And I don't blame her. I would do the exact same thing. Ultimately, when you factor in the problems that this tent has and the really poor quality control, I do not think this is a good tent. What I find interesting is that over the last year or so, I have spoken to so many people who own this tent and they absolutely love it. But here's the kicker. Just about every single person has had major problems from their tent. I find that interesting because after testing out this product, I do not see what they love about it. It has so many issues. Getting in it and getting out of it is a pain. I do have to say that it sets up incredibly easy. The overall setup process is super, super simple. But this is not a unique tent. There's absolutely nothing proprietary about this as far as I've seen. There are countless companies out there who offer the exact same tent for less, folks. And it makes me very interested to check out their products. I do have to say this, there are some companies who offer tents just like this that cost quite a bit more. I'm even interested in those. What makes that price so much higher? Is it better quality? I'd rather pay more to have a better designed product, a better made product. Because as it stands now with the Gazelle, this is really, really poor. So right there you have it, everyone. Those are my thoughts and also Susie's thoughts about the Gazelle tent. What do you all think about this shelter? I know that there are many people out there who absolutely love it. So my question is, what do you love about your tent? Do you have the same issues that I've had with this one? Everyone, I'm done for now. Take care, be well, make sure to comment down below. Also, hit the thumbs up before you go. It does help the channel. I cannot wait to read your comments down below and your emails. Be well, take care, strength and honor.